Okay, my SF friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got another couple of book appraisals for you. Now, it occurred to me that most, if not all of the books I've read this year have been by American authors, apart from one, I think, by an Eastern European author. So I thought I would redress that balance by reading a couple of celebrated UK writers, science fiction writers. And the two I picked were Earthworks by Brian Aldiss, as you can see there, nice cover, and The Drowned World by J.G.Ballard. Okay, and neither of them are particularly big books, so the synopsis of either shouldn't take too much time. We'll start off with Earthworks. Our protagonist is a man called Noel Noland. That's Knowle and Noland, Noel Noland. Now he's what's known as a landsman. He's like a bonded slave who does heavy labour for the overseer, who's a guy called the farmer. That's all we know him as. And he escapes and joins a group called the Travellers, who are sort of like anarchic dissidents. And he gets friendly with the leader, but after a while he betrays the leader to the authorities. Now the authorities are pleased to get hold of him because they've tried for years, and the farmer, by way of well, I don't know if you could call it that, by way of gratitude, but anyway, he gives him captaincy of a ship, a sailing ship, but it's mechanised one. It doesn't take much looking after at all. And on his way to Africa, where he's responsible for ferrying sand. Now the earth is irradiated and the land is poisonous. It's overpopulated, so there's not much food around. And Noland is schizophrenic, and he gets these hallucinations, these bout of hallucinations. It was during one of these episodes that he runs the ship aground on the coast of Africa. And he and a couple of his co-sailors, they managed to survive. Eventually the other two are killed and he's on his own. And he meets the farmer, again, the farmer and his girlfriend, who he falls in love with. And he becomes involved in the political machinations of the African nations. Now, the African nations are the most powerful on earth at this point. And he becomes involved with the politics, and eventually he gets involved with something that will change the course of the earth forever. And that's all I can tell you without spoilers. So that was a brief synopsis of Earthworks. Now, I must admit, I was a little disappointed with this, because I read so much about Aldiss. He's one of our foremost science fiction writers, and I mean, I hope this is one of his minor works, because I didn't find it that great, to be honest. It gets very bogged down with some of the hallucinatory stuff that Nolan goes through, and it gets a bit confusing. And the plot, it might have been fairly decent when it was written. I don't know, back in the 60s. I think it was one of his earlier novels, but it doesn't really wash now because a lot of the stuff in here has been covered elsewhere. So yeah, as I say, that's not to say it was a bad book, because it wasn't. It had some very interesting stuff in it, and some good writing. So on that basis, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, I would give it a 6. A solid 6. Because it was definitely above average. So 6 is the only place I can go, really, isn't it? Okay, so that was that one. Now, the Drowned World is a little bit more complex. Basically, the waters of Earth has risen because the Van Allen belt in the atmosphere has become depleted, and the sun's radiation has caused the seas, the oceans to rise, and everything is underwater. And the only places where people can find any relief from the overbearing heat is at either the North Pole or the South Pole. Now, our protagonist is a Dr. Robert Cairns, who, supervised by a chap called Riggs, he's a colonel with some army people. He's doing experiments in the London area, but of course, as I say, everything's underwater, so they're floating on top. And Riggs decides that he's going to leave, leaving Cairns and a lady called Beatrice Dahl and another scientist called Bodkin to stay behind and carry on with the experiments. But while they remain there, they come across this group of pirates who start riding around the area on jet bikes and what have you. And that's led by a guy called Strangman, who's not very nice. And he wants to drain the lagoon under which London lies in order to loot the buildings, which he does. And Dr. Cairns is disgusted with this, and he becomes dissident, and Strangman captures him, tortures him, and discusses killing him. However, Colonel Riggs returns with his soldiers and saves them. And he strikes up a truce with Strangman. And then they decide to leave again, expecting Cairns and the other guy, Bodkin, he's been killed trying to blow up something or other. I can't remember what it was. And it's only him and the girl left. And he obviously expects them to go with him, but they decide not to. And so the story is then concerned with the girl. The girl decides she's definitely going to stay, and the story is then concerned with the fate of Cairns, which I won't tell you anymore because there'll be multi-spoilers in there. But it's an interesting book, finale. Right, my impressions of that one. I again, like Earthworks, I was a little disappointed with it because I know Ballard is very, very, very well thought of, more so perhaps than Aldiss. And again, I would hope this is one of his minor works. I have read a couple of Ballards way back in the 60s, 70s, and I remember they were a lot more interesting than this book. This is one of sort of like a set of 4 books he did about ecological disasters, if you like. So, I'd be interested to read at least one of the others, just by way of comparison. But again, I mean, this is well written. It's just that the plot, although it seems complicated, is fairly bog standard and straightforward. The characters are not particularly memorable, actually, apart from the pirate king Strangman, if you like. So to that effect, I didn't dislike it, but I was just a little bit underwhelmed, bearing in mind what I know Ballard can do. So I mean, there's not really much more I can say with it. It runs on a fairly straight track along with our earthworks, and under those circumstances, on my scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, it comes in at 6 again, because again it is above average, definitely. Just not all that enthralling or engaging. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me there, but that's the way I saw it. Okay, so that was those 2. I'm getting through books very slowly these days, but I'm in the middle of another one by an English author at the moment, which I'll be discussing later on. Okay, so I have, very shortly after this, I have another pickups for early August. A lot of books, actually. So that'll be a long one for you. And then after that, I move away from science fiction, and I have a video of my shmup pickups for all the shmup fans out there. So yes, thank you very much for indulging me, and as usual, subscribing and commenting and watching and sharing if you do. And as I say, I'll be back very, very shortly, so don't go away. Until then, bye-bye for now.